Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was already trained before meeting All Might? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sun beat down on the twisted, rusted graveyard of Dagobah Municipal Beach, casting long, jagged shadows across the sand. The air didn't smell like the ocean. It smelled of wet iron, rotting rubber, and the salty decay of a society that had forgotten how to clean up after itself. It was a place where things went to be forgotten. It was also where Midoriya Izuku went to be forged. 498. The number left Izuku's throat as a ragged hiss. Sweat slicked his dark green hair back from his forehead, stinging his eyes, but he didn't blink. His hands, wrapped in frayed white athletic tape that had turned gray with grime, gripped the tread of a massive, discarded tractor tire. The rubber was sun-baked and scorching hot, but the calluses on his palms, thick, yellowed pads of skin built over 4 years of torture, absorbed the heat without complaint. 499. He dropped his hips, engaging his glutes and hamstrings. The muscles in his calves, defined and hard as braided rope, corded under his skin. He didn't just lift with his back. He drove through the sand, exploding upward with a mechanic's-obsessed precision. The tire, weighing easily 300 pounds, flipped over with a heavy, dull thud that vibrated through the beach. 500. Izuku collapsed onto the sand, his chest heaving like a bellows. He stared up at the sky, the blue expanse broken only by the skeletal silhouette of a rusted refrigerator tower he had stacked last week. He checked the cheap digital watch on his wrist. 1 hour, 12 minutes. 2 minutes faster than last week. He sat up, grabbing a water bottle from a nearby cooler. He wasn't the scrawny, trembling boy the world expected him to be. At 14, Izuku was a knot of compact muscle. He wasn't bulky. He didn't have the frame for gargantuan mass, but he was dense. Every inch of him was functional. His shoulders were broad from pull-ups on crane hooks. His legs were explosive from sprinting through loose sand carrying scrap metal. His forearms were veined maps of his exertion, marred by small white scars from jagged metal and glass, the receipts of his labor. 4 years. It had been 4 years since the doctor had told him, with a pitying look that hurt worse than a slap, that he was quirkless. Evolutionary dead end. That was the phrase. For a week he had cried. He had watched the video of All Might saving the day, weeping until his tear ducts ran dry. He had waited for his mother, Inko, to tell him he could still be a hero. She hadn't. She had apologized instead. That apology had broken something in him. But when the pieces settled, they had reassembled into something sharper. If no one believes in me, he had decided at 10 years old, staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, then I have to be undeniable. He stood up, brushing the sand from his legs. He picked up a blackened, heavy notebook lying on top of the cooler. The cover read Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. But inside, there were no doodles of costumes. There were no fanboy ramblings about catchphrases. Izuku flipped to a page titled Kamui Woods. Strengths: high mobility, crowd control, prehensile limb generation. Weaknesses: fire, obvious, joint dehydration, localized stress points at the elbows. If engaging in CQC, close quarters combat, aim for the inner elbow to disrupt vine production. It was a kill book. Or rather, a neutralization manual. Izuku respected heroes, but he analyzed them like opponents. If he was going to be the only quirkless hero, he had to know how to beat everyone. Izuku packed his gear. He had school in 30 minutes. Aldera Junior High awaited, a place that was less a school and more a holding cell for the ego of one Bakugo Katsuki. Izuku pulled on his Gakurin uniform. It was slightly tight around the shoulders now. He adjusted the collar, hiding the faint bruising on his neck where he'd practiced grappling escapes with a dummy made of tires and duct tape. Time to go to work, he whispered. The classroom buzzed with the chaotic energy of teenagers who had just been told their futures were bright. The teacher stood at the podium, waving a sheaf of papers with a performative lack of interest. I'm supposed to hand out these career aptitude forms, the teacher droned, tossing the papers into the air. But why bother? You all want to be heroes, don't you? The class erupted. Quirks flashed, eyes extended, fingers turned to stone, minor telekinesis through erasers. It was a display of peacocking that made Izuku's eye twitch. Inefficient, he thought, wasting energy on a display of dominance with no threat present. Izuku sat silently in the back, his posture perfect, his hands folded on his desk. He didn't cheer. He didn't shrink. He just observed. He was calculating the trajectory of a pencil someone had thrown, noting the poor aerodynamics. "Hey, teach!" The voice cracked like a whip. Bakugo Katsuki leaned back, feet on his desk, a grin splitting his face that was half predator, half king. "Don't lump me in with these extras. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some D-lister. I'm going for the top. I'm going to UA." The class jeered, but Bakugo silenced them with a crackle of nitroglycerin in his palms. The smell of burned sugar and smoke filled the room. "Oh, right," the teacher said, looking at his clipboard. "Bakugo has excellent marks. And oh, that's interesting. Midoriya is also aiming for UA." Silence. It wasn't the confused silence of the past. It was a heavy, awkward silence. The class turned to look at Izuku. In another life, Izuku might have flinched. He might have tried to hide. But this Izuku simply held the teacher's gaze. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His grades were perfect. His mock exam scores were in the top percentile. He had ensured they were. "DKU," Bakugo lunged. It was a move he had done 1,000 times since childhood. He slammed his palm onto Izuku's desk, an explosion detonating instantly. Boom! Smoke billowed. Papers scattered. The desk was scorched black, but Izuku wasn't in the chair. In the fraction of a second before Bakugo's palm made contact, Izuku had kicked backward, sliding his chair 2 feet. He stood now, just outside the smoke, brushing a speck of ash from his shoulder. "Good morning, Katsuki," Izuku said calmly. His voice wasn't loud, but it had a timbre to it, a solidity that hadn't been there years ago. "Don't you ignore me!" Bakugo snarled, smoke rising from his hand. "You think you can get into UA without a quirk? You're a pebble. You're worse than these extras. You're defenseless." "Defenseless implies I cannot defend myself," Izuku said. He looked at Bakugo's stance. Right foot forward. Weight shifted to the toes. He's preparing for a right hook lead. His telegraphing has gotten worse. He relies too much on the flash of the explosion to distract from the mechanics of the punch. "Forget the trick with the chair." Bakugo stepped forward, grabbing Izuku's collar. "You're mocking me just by existing. You think you can stand in the same ring as me?" Izuku looked down at the hand bunching his collar. He could feel the heat radiating from Bakugo's palm. "Let go, Katsuki." "Or what?" Izuku's eyes, usually a soft, forest green, seemed to darken. He moved his hand, gripping Bakugo's wrist. He didn't squeeze with his fingers. He applied pressure to the radial nerve. It was a subtle, precise pinch he had learned from an old anatomy textbook. Bakugo's eyes widened. His grip faltered involuntarily. "Or you'll be late for your own training," Izuku finished smoothly, stepping back as Bakugo's hand dropped. "And we both know how much you hate inefficiency." The class stared. Nobody had seen the nerve pinch. They just saw Deku talk back, and Bakugo let go. Bakugo stood there, vibrating with rage, staring at his own hand, then at Izuku. He wasn't scared, Bakugo didn't do fear, but he was confused. For the last year, Deku had stopped crying. He had stopped following Bakugo around. He had become a ghost that haunted the periphery, quiet and disturbingly fit. "You're dead, Deku," Bakugo muttered, but he didn't attack again. The bell rang. Izuku picked up his bag. He didn't look back. The walk home was Izuku's decompression time. He took the long route, avoiding the main shopping district. He preferred the underpasses and the back alleys. They were quieter, and they offered better parkour opportunities. He reached the Koiwa Tunnel. It was a dark, cylindrical throat of concrete that passed under the highway. The air inside was cool and damp. Izuku walked in the center of the road, his footsteps echoing rhythmically. Step, breath. Step, breath. He was replaying the encounter with Bakugo. "I shouldn't have used the nerve pinch. It revealed too much. If he figures out I'm studying judo, he'll adjust his fighting style to be more ranged. I need to keep my capabilities hidden until the entrance exam." He was so lost in his tactical review that he almost missed the sound. A wet, slurping noise. Like mud sliding off a shovel. Izuku stopped dead. He dropped his center of gravity instinctively, his knees bending slightly. He didn't turn around fast. He turned around deliberately. From the manhole cover behind him, a nightmare was rising. It was a sentient fluid, a mass of dark green sludge with manic, bulging yellow eyes and a maw of jagged liquid teeth, a medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain hissed, his voice sounding like drowning. Villain. Fluid body type. No visible solid core. Physical strikes will be ineffective. Izuku's mind raced, processing the threat in microseconds. Distance is priority. You'll do nicely, kid. The villain surged forward, a tidal wave of slime. Izuku moved. He didn't scream. He didn't freeze. He pivoted on his left foot and sprinted. Don't run! The villain roared, tentacles of sludge lashing out. Izuku ducked under a whip of slime that cracked the concrete wall where his head had been a second ago. He slid under another, using his momentum to carry him forward. But the tunnel was enclosed. There was nowhere to go. He's faster than me. Fluid dynamics in a confined space. I can't outrun him. The sludge caught his ankle. Izuku hit the ground hard, but he tucked his chin to avoid a concussion. The slime dragged him back. It was cold and smelled of sewage and death. Gotcha! The slime engulfed him. It forced its way into his mouth and nose. Suffocation. Izuku's vision blurred. The panic tried to set in, the primal, lizard-brain fear of dying. But Izuku strangled the fear. He had trained for stress responses. He held his breath, puffing his cheeks to create a small pocket of air. Don't struggle blindly. That wastes oxygen. Analyze. Analyze. His hands clawed at the sludge. Liquid. Viscous. Non-Newtonian? No, it flowed too easily. He couldn't grab it. He couldn't punch it. Weakness. Where is the weakness? His eyes, stinging from the grime, locked onto the villain's eyes. They were solid. Izuku reached into his pocket. He couldn't generate force to punch, but he had dexterity. He pulled out a metal pen he used for his notes. With the last of his fading strength, Izuku didn't flail. He thrust the pen upward, aiming for the yellow sclera of the villain's left eye. Arg! The villain flinched, the sludge loosening around Izuku's face for a fraction of a second. Izuku gasped, sucking in a jagged breath of air mixed with sewage. It wasn't enough to escape, but it bought him seconds. You little brat! The villain tightened his grip. I'm going to wring you out like a clang. The manhole cover exploded upward. Have no fear! The voice boomed, resonating off the concrete walls with enough force to rattle Izuku's teeth. A figure stood silhouetted at the entrance of the tunnel, backlit by the afternoon sun. He was massive, a mountain of muscle and American-style shading. Why? The figure vanished. No, he didn't vanish. He moved so fast the eye couldn't track him. Because I am here. All Might appeared before the sludge villain. He drew his fist back. To Izuku, time seemed to slow. He saw the rotation of the hip, the torque of the waist, the perfect kinetic chain of the world's greatest hero. Texas. Smash! The punch didn't even touch the villain. The wind pressure did. A cannon blast of compressed air slammed into the sludge. The villain was atomized, blown apart into droplets that plastered against the tunnel walls. The force of the wind knocked Izuku free, tumbling him backward across the pavement. Izuku rolled, coming to a stop in a crouch. He coughed violently, expelling the last of the slime from his lungs. The wind died down. Droplets of slime rained from the ceiling. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. All Might stood tall, his signature grin blindingly bright. He was holding 2 empty soda bottles. I've been chasing this slippery fellow through the sewers. Izuku wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He stood up, his legs shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. He looked at All Might. He was huge. He was vibrant. He was everything Izuku had studied for 10 years. Sir, Izuku rasped, his voice hoarse. Your entry angle. You utilize the wind pressure to minimize collateral damage to the tunnel structure while maximizing dispersion of the target. Highly efficient. All Might blinked. He had expected screaming. He had expected "Oh my God," It's All Might. He hadn't expected a tactical critique from a boy who had just been half-drowned. Haha. Yes. Precision is key, young man. All Might quickly began scooping the scattered villain into the soda bottles with blinding speed. You're a sharp one. Usually, folks are a bit more hysterical. Izuku walked over, picking up his backpack. Panic increases heart rate and oxygen consumption. It would have accelerated the suffocation process. He looked at his notebook, which had fallen on the ground. All Might had already signed it. Well, I must be off. Evil never sleeps, and neither do I. All Might flexed, preparing to jump. Wait, Izuku said. No time. Stay safe, citizen. All Might launched himself into the air. The shockwave cracked the pavement. Izuku didn't think. He didn't weigh the pros and cons. He saw the trajectory. He judged the distance. If I don't ask now, I will never know. Izuku sprinted 3 steps, planted his foot on the guardrail, and leaped. It wasn't a desperate flail. It was a targeted grab. His hands clamped onto the heavy fabric of All Might's cargo pants. Whoa! All Might looked down as they soared over the city. Hey! Let go! This is excessive enthusiasm. If I let go now, Izuku shouted over the roaring wind, his eyes squinted shut against the pressure. I will die from fall damage. Based on our current altitude and velocity, the impact would be fatal. Good point. All Might yelled. Close your mouth and eyes. They landed on a rooftop of a nondescript office building. All Might landed heavily, but Izuku released his grip a moment before impact, rolling across the gravel roof to dissipate the momentum. He came up into a standing position, dusting off his knees. That was reckless. All Might scolded, though he looked exhausted. He turned away. I really must go. Wait. Izuku stepped forward. I have to ask you something. All Might paused. Smoke began to hiss from his body. I have no quirk, Izuku said, his voice steady, though his fists were clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. I have no powers. I have trained my body for 4 years. I have studied every hero and villain in the registry. I have pushed myself until my bones ached. He looked at All Might's back. Can a person without a quirk, can I be a hero like you? Not a rescue worker. Not a police officer. A hero. Silence stretched across the roof. Then, the steam exploded. All Might's voice deflated along with his body. The muscle melted away, leaving behind a skeletal, gaunt man in baggy clothes. He coughed, a wet, hacking sound, and blood sprayed from his mouth. Izuku didn't scream. He didn't recoil. He stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. Hemoptysis, Izuku muttered. He looked at the man, the sunken eyes, the pallor. Chronic wasting condition? All Might wiped the blood from his chin, looking shocked at the boy's lack of horror. You're not freaking out? I'm analyzing, Izuku said, though his heart was pounding. You're All Might. But you're injured. All Might sighed, sitting down heavily on a vent. He lifted his shirt. Izuku sucked in a breath. The scar was a disaster area. A spiderweb of purple and red tissue that covered half his torso. Most of his stomach was gone. One lung looked like it had been shredded. 5 years ago, All Might whispered. A villain did this. Half my respiratory organs were destroyed. My stomach was lost. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day. Toxic chainsaw? Izuku asked automatically. You know your stuff. All Might chuckled darkly. But no. He couldn't scratch me. This was someone else. Someone the world doesn't know about. All Might looked at Izuku. The hero's blue eyes were dim. Pros are always risking their lives, kid. Some villains can't be beaten just by training. Some powers, they defy logic. Without a quirk? All Might looked at his own hand. I can't tell you yes simply because you want to hear it. The job is getting harder. The villains are getting stronger. If you want to save people, become a police officer. They get teased, but it's a fine profession. The words hit Izuku like physical blows. Harder than the sludge villain. Harder than the tire flips. I see, Izuku said quietly. All Might stood up. It's not bad to dream. But you have to be realistic, young man. All Might walked to the stairwell door. He hesitated, looking back at the boy standing alone on the roof. The boy looked strong, fit, capable. But the world wasn't built for capable men. It was built for gods. "I'm sorry," All Might said, and closed the door. Izuku stood on the roof for a long time. The wind picked up, chilling the sweat on his skin. Realistic. He looked at his hands. They were scarred. They were strong. But apparently, they were empty. Realistic, he repeated. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I didn't train to be realistic. I trained to be impossible. He walked to the edge of the roof, looking out over the city. Smoke was rising in the distance. The Tatooine shopping district. An explosion? Izuku's mind tried to shut off. Not my problem. I'm not a hero. All Might said so, but his feet were already moving. He wasn't moving because he wanted to be a hero. He was moving because there was data to be gathered. He was moving because standing still felt like dying. By the time Izuku reached the shopping district, the fire was an inferno. The crowd was thick, held back by police tape. Izuku pushed his way to the front, using his size and firm elbows to navigate the throng. Back up. It's dangerous. Death Arms, a hero with massive strength, was shouting. Izuku looked at the scene. It was a war zone. The alley was ablaze. And in the center, the sludge villain. How? Izuku whispered. The bottles. All Might dropped them when I grabbed him. Guilt, cold and sharp, pierced his chest. This is my fault. Why aren't the heroes doing anything? A bystander yelled. They can't. Another replied. The wind is blowing the fire toward them. Kamui Woods can't get close. Empty Lady can't fit in the alley. Izuku scanned the situation. It was a stalemate. The heroes were waiting for someone with a suitable quirk. They were spectators. Then, through the flames and the shifting sludge, Izuku saw it. A face. Terrified. Angry. Desperate. Bakugo Katsuki. The sludge was suffocating him. Explosions popped weakly from his palms, but they only fed the fire. The villain was using Bakugo's own power to keep the heroes at bay. Bakugo's eyes met Izuku's. For the first time in their lives, Bakugo didn't look down on him. He looked to him. It was a silent scream for help. Izuku didn't think about All Might's words. He didn't think about realism. He thought about the notebook in his bag. Page 44. Fluid villains have poor tensile strength against rotational force. Page 12. Bakugo's explosions create a momentary vacuum. Izuku ducked under the police tape. Hey! Kid! Stop! Death Arms roared. Izuku didn't stop. He sprinted. His mind was a computer, processing the battlefield in slow motion. Fire to the left. Debris to the right. The villain is focused on the heroes. Izuku ripped his backpack off his shoulders. He didn't just throw it. He swung it by the strap like a flail. Let him go! Izuku roared. He hurled the bag. It spun through the air, heavy with textbooks. It slammed into the villain's protruding eye with a wet smack. Gah! The villain recoiled. The fluid loosened around Bakugo's mouth. Bakugo gasped, coughing smoke. Deku? Bakugo wheezed. Why are you? Izuku slid into the flames. He didn't try to pull Bakugo out. The sludge was too strong. Instead, Izuku grabbed a discarded rusted pipe lying in the alley debris. He needs to breathe. Izuku screamed, more to himself than anyone. He jammed the pipe into the sludge, not stabbing the villain, but wedging it between the sludge and Bakugo's shoulder. He used it as a lever. Physics. Leverage. Force multiplier. Izuku planted his feet and heaved. His muscles, honed by thousands of tire flips, screamed. The sludge stretched. Get off! The villain recovered, sending a massive tendril of slime toward Izuku. Izuku saw it coming. He couldn't dodge it entirely. He dropped his shoulder, taking the hit. The impact cracked a rib. He grunted but didn't let go of the lever. Katsuki! Izuku yelled, looking Bakugo in the eye. Explosion! Now! Aim for the ground. Create a shockwave to disrupt his cohesion. Bakugo stared at him. The nerd was giving orders? The pebble was commanding the king? But the pebble was the only one standing in the fire. Bakugo gritted his teeth and fired. Boom! The blast hit the pavement. The shockwave rippled up through the sludge. The fluid vibrated, losing its grip. Now! Izuku shouted. He grabbed Bakugo's arm and pulled with everything he had. For a second, they were free. But the villain was massive. He recovered instantly. You little pests! A tidal wave of sludge rose up, eclipsing the sun. It was death. There was no leverage for this. There was no parkour move. Izuku stood in front of Bakugo, raising his fists. He knew he couldn't stop it. But he wouldn't die on his knees. Then, the wind changed. Blood sprayed on the pavement next to them. I really am pathetic. The voice was low, furious. Izuku looked up. All Might was there. He wasn't the skeleton. He was the Titan again, pushed beyond his limit, steam pouring off him like a braking engine. I told you to be realistic, while I stood by and watched. All Might grabbed Izuku in Bakugo's arms. Thanks for the reminder, kid. Heroes are always risking their lives to turn rhetoric into reality. The villain struck. All Might didn't dodge. He drove his fist forward. Detroit. Smash! The world went white. The air pressure didn't just scatter the villain, it changed the weather. The clouds above spiraled. Rain began to fall from the sheer displacement of atmospheric pressure. The fire was snuffed out instantly. When the dust settled, the villain was gone. All Might stood victorious, steam hissing from his body, and Izuku was on his knees, gasping for air, clutching his bruised ribs. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights and scolding voices. The pro-heroes were furious. Kamui Woods and Death Arms cornered Izuku. You suicidal idiot! Death Arms shouted, pointing a massive finger in Izuku's face. You could have gotten yourself killed. You have no quirk. You interfered with official hero business. Izuku stood there, getting bandaged by a paramedic. He listened to the scolding for a moment, then looked up. His eyes were cold. Interfered? Izuku asked calmly. Death Arms blinked. What? I created an opening, Izuku said, his voice cutting through the noise. I disrupted the villain's vision. I established an airway for the hostage. I leveraged the fluid mechanics to weaken the hold. In the time it took you to debate jurisdiction and matchups, I acted. He stood up, wincing slightly at his rib pain. I may be quirkless, sir. But I was the only one who moved. Death Arms opened his mouth, but closed it. There was no fear in the boy's eyes. Only the hard, cold look of someone who knew they were right. Meanwhile, Bakugo was being praised. Great quirk, kid! You held out so long. Bakugo wasn't listening. He was staring at Izuku. He was staring at the defenseless boy who had just walked into hell with a metal pipe and a plan. The sun was setting as Izuku walked home. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. He felt heavy. I moved, he thought. I didn't think. I just moved. DKU. Izuku stopped and turned. Bakugo came running up the street, panting. Katsuki, Izuku said wearily. I'm not in the mood for. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled, his voice cracking. I didn't need saving. Especially not by a quirkless failure like you. Don't look down on me. I don't owe you anything. Bakugo turned and stomped away. Izuku watched him go. A small smile touched his lips. He's acknowledging me. He's not treating me like a bug anymore. He's treating me like a rival. I am here. Izuku jumped as All Might slid out from around a corner in a blur of motion. I am here. All Might struck a pose, then immediately coughed up a fountain of blood and reverted to his skeletal form. All Might? Izuku rushed over. You shouldn't be moving. You pushed past your limit. I had to find you, All Might wheezed, wiping his mouth. I have a correction to make. A correction? Earlier. I told you to be realistic. I told you that you couldn't be a hero. All Might looked at Izuku. The skepticism was gone. In the hero's sunken eyes, there was a fierce intensity. Top heroes have stories about their school days, All Might said. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku's breath hitched. That happened to you today, didn't it? Izuku clenched his hands over his heart. The memory of the heat, the fear, the absolute need to save Bakugo. You didn't have a quirk, All Might continued. But you had the heart. And more than that, you had the skill. You analyzed the situation. You fought with what you had. You were more of a hero back there than any of the pros. All Might stepped forward. The wind blew, stirring the leaves around them. I've been looking for a successor, All Might said softly. Someone to inherit my power. I thought I needed someone with a strong quirk. Someone flashy. He shook his head. I was wrong. I needed someone with the spirit. And the vessel. All Might pointed a finger at Izuku. Midoriya Izuku. You are already built for this. You have forged yourself in the dark so you could serve in the light. Tears pricked Izuku's eyes. Not the waterfalls of his childhood. Just a few, silent tears of vindication. You can become a hero. Izuku fell to his knees, clutching his chest. It was the permission he had waited 10 years to hear. And All Might added, crouching down to eye level. I have a proposal. My quirk. One for all. It can be transferred. And I want you to have it. Izuku looked up, wiping his eyes. His analytical brain tried to process it. Transferable quirk? Genetic implication? Energy storage? But his heart silenced the logic. I'm ready, Izuku said. All Might smiled. I know you are. Usually, I'd have to put a successor through 10 months of hell to prepare their body. All Might looked at Izuku's arms, the muscle, the scars, the calluses. But you? All Might laughed. You've already been through hell. You're not starting from zero, kid. You're starting from the launch pad. He stood up and offered his hand. Let's go. We have work to do. Izuku grabbed the hand. His grip was iron. Yes, sir. The streetlights flickered on, casting pools of sodium orange light against the deepening twilight. The wind had died down, leaving the air heavy with the scent of ozone and the lingering phantom smell of smoke from the sludge villain incident. Midoriya Izuku stood on the sidewalk, his uniform grimy with soot, his ribs aching with a dull, throbbing rhythm that synced with his heartbeat. But he didn't feel the pain. His entire reality had narrowed down to the man standing before him, All Might. The symbol of peace. Or rather, the gaunt, skeletal shadow of the man the world worshipped. A successor? Izuku repeated. The words felt foreign in his mouth, like a language he hadn't studied. All Might leaned against the concrete wall, wiping a fresh trickle of blood from his chin. He looked tired, bone-deep tired, but his eyes were burning with a terrifying intensity. I speak of my quirk, young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice grave. The media calls it superhuman strength. The internet forums speculate it's some kind of gravity manipulation or kinetic boosting, but they are all wrong. My quirk is not a natural mutation. It is a torch. Izuku's brow furrowed. His analytical mind, usually running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, hit a snag. A torch? That, biologically speaking, that doesn't make sense. Quirks are genetic factors, alpha plus distinctiveness in the DNA. They don't pass on. This one does, All Might said. He pushed himself off the wall, standing as tall as his emaciated frame would allow. It is a power cultivated by one person, stockpiled, and then handed to another. It is the crystallization of power. The voices of the past, echoing into the future. It is called one for all. Izuku went silent. He processed the information. Stockpiled power. Transferable. It defies current Mendelian genetics regarding quirk inheritance. If true, it implies a parasitic or symbiotic energy distinct from the user's biological code. Why me? Izuku asked. He didn't ask it with insecurity. He asked it like he was debugging a line of code. You have access to top pro heroes. Endeavor. Best genist. Or students with powerful quirks at UA. Giving this power to someone with a strong base quirk would theoretically create a hybrid of exponential potential. Giving it to a quirkless individual seems, statistically inefficient. All Might let out a sharp, barking laugh. Blood flecked his lips. You really are a rational monster, aren't you? Most kids would just cry. All Might stepped closer, placing a large, bony hand on Izuku's shoulder. Efficiency isn't what makes a hero, Midoriya. It's the heart. I watched the pros today. They were efficient. They calculated the risks. They decided the matchup was bad. And because of that, a boy almost died. All Might's grip tightened. You didn't calculate. You moved. You were the only one who acted like a hero. That drive? That madness to save others even when you're powerless? That is the prerequisite for one for all. Power looks for a vessel that won't be corrupted by it. A vessel that understands the weight of helplessness. Izuku looked down at his own hands. The scars on his knuckles from punching sandbags. The calluses on his palms from the pull-up bars. I trained to be undeniable, he thought. I trained because I thought I had to do it alone. But I don't have to be alone. He looked up, his green eyes locking onto All Might's hollow sockets. I accept, Izuku said. I will take it. And I will not waste it. All Might grinned. It wasn't the commercial smile. It was a genuine, jagged expression of relief. I knew you'd say that. All Might reached up and plucked a long, blonde hair from his head. He held it out in the dim streetlight. Eat this. Izuku stared at the hair. He stared at All Might. Excuse me? To transfer the power, you have to ingest some of my DNA, All Might explained, entirely serious. It doesn't matter what it is. Hair is the easiest, Izuku sighed. He reached out, taking the hair with the precision of a surgeon handling a scalpel. He didn't hesitate. He didn't make a face. He placed it on his tongue and swallowed it dry. Done, Izuku said. What now? All Might blinked, clearly expecting more hesitation. Well. Now we wait. It takes time to digest and for the power to fuse with your system. Usually, 2 or 3 hours. All Might looked Izuku up and down. He tapped his chin thoughtfully. Usually, All Might continued, I would design a training regimen for you. A vessel needs to be strong. If a weak body receives one for all, the limbs would blow off. The recoil would shatter the skeleton. I was planning to have you clean up Dagoba Beach over the next 10 months to build muscle mass. The beach is already clean, Izuku said flatly. All Might froze. Come again? I cleaned it, Izuku said. I started when I was 10. I finished the South Quadrant last week. The North Quadrant is mostly recycled now. I used the heavier debris for strongman training. All Might's jaw dropped. You cleaned the garbage dump? By yourself? It was free weight training, Izuku shrugged, wincing as his ribs protested. And it improved the local ecosystem. 2 birds, 1 stone. All Might stared at the boy. He looked at the thick neck, the broad shoulders that tapered into a waist defined by core strength, the legs that looked like tree trunks hidden under the school trousers. My God, All Might whispered. You're not a project. You're a turnkey solution. He patted Izuku's shoulder again, gentler this time. Go home, Midoriya. Rest. Your body is about to undergo a massive biological shift. Tomorrow is Saturday. Meet me at the beach at 6 a.m. We don't need to build the vessel. We just need to teach it how to hold the water. The Midoriya apartment was quiet when Izuku returned. His mother, Inko, was asleep, having left a note and a plate of cold katsudon on the table. Izuku ate mechanically. His mind was a tempest, one for all. Stockpiled power. He went to his room, a shrine to All Might, though lately, it had become more of a war room. Posters were flanked by anatomy charts. Action figures stood next to stacks of books on kinesiology, physics, and martial arts history. Izuku took off his shirt and stood in front of the mirror. He was bruised. A large purple splotch blossomed on his side where the sludge villain had hit him. But beneath the bruise, the muscle was dense. He flexed his arm. The bicep didn't just bulge, it hardened like stone. He had 0 body fat. He was wire and steel. All Might said limbs would blow off if the body was weak. How strong is strong? He sat at his desk, opening a fresh notebook. He wrote one for all on the first page. Hypothesis. The quirk grants access to an energy pool. It is not muscle generation, it is energy output. Like running an electrical current through a wire. If the wire, my body, has high resistance, weakness, the heat, power, melts it. I need to be a superconductor. He looked at his hands. He felt nothing. No surge. No lightning. Did it work? He lay down on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The exhaustion finally caught up to him. He didn't dream of glory. He dreamt of the hair. It tasted like hair. Saturday, 6 a.m. Dagoba Municipal Beach. The sun was a pale yolk on the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gray and gold. The beach, once a mountain range of trash, was now a flat expanse of golden sand, broken only by a few remaining rusted hulks of machinery Izuku had kept for exercise. Izuku was already there. He was wearing a dark green tracksuit, sleeves rolled up. He was doing handstand push-ups against the side of a rusted pickup truck. 98, 99, 100. He pushed off, flipping onto his feet just as a cloud of steam announced All Might's arrival. "Good morning!" All Might boomed in his muscle form, then immediately poofed into his skinny form, coughing. "Morning. Good morning, All Might," Izuku said, barely winded. "I've been monitoring my vitals. Resting heart rate is elevated by 4 beats per minute. Slight feeling of heaviness in the stomach. Otherwise, no change. Straight to business, huh?" All Might chuckled. He walked over, kicking the tire of the truck. "Well, the power should be in there. It's digested. It's part of you now." All Might's expression turned serious. "Midoriya, listen to me. This power, it's not like turning on a light switch. It's like starting a jet engine. If you aren't careful, you will crash and burn." "I understand," Izuku said. "Instructions? Close your eyes," All Might said. "Focus. Tell me what you feel." Izuku closed his eyes. He breathed in the salt air. He searched his body. For years, he had practiced mindfulness and muscle isolation. He knew where every tendon attached. At first, nothing. Just the ache of his ribs. Then, a spark. Deep in his gut, something was simmering. It wasn't adrenaline. It was heavier. Older. It felt like a dormant volcano. "I feel it," Izuku whispered. "It feels volatile." "Good," All Might said. "Now, here's the visualization. Imagine an egg in a microwave. If you don't poke a hole in it, if you don't regulate the heat, it explodes," Izuku finished. "Exactly. Don't let the egg explode. Visualize the power spreading. But keep the shell intact." All Might pointed to a massive pile of compressed trash. A refrigerator tied to a sofa tied to a safe, that Izuku had prepared for hauling. "Try to smash that. Just a punch. But be careful." Izuku stepped up to the pile. He assumed a Zenkutsudachi stance, front stance, karate style. Deep base. Low center of gravity. Egg in a microwave, Izuku thought. That's an abstract metaphor. I need physics. I need to draw the energy from the core and channel it through the kinetic chain. Hip. Shoulder. Elbow. Fist. He reached for the spark. He grabbed it, and the spark became a sun. Power. It flooded him. It wasn't a stream, it was a dam breaking. Red veins of energy glowing under his skin. The air around him crackled with yellow lightning. Too much. Izuku's mind screamed. The output is unregulated, but his body was already moving. The punch was thrown. Smash! His fist made contact with the refrigerator. Boom! The sound was deafening. It wasn't a thud, it was a gunshot. The refrigerator didn't just dent, it disintegrated. The sofa behind it was blown into confetti. The safe was launched like a cannonball, skipping across the ocean's surface 300 meters out. A shockwave of air blasted sand into a cloud around them. Holy stinking super crap! All Might yelled, shielding his face. The dust settled. Izuku stood there, his right arm extended. Smoke was rising from his sleeve. Midoriya! All Might rushed forward. Are you okay? That was 100%. Izuku didn't scream. He didn't cry. He stared at his arm. His sleeve was shredded. His skin was purple, bruised to the bone. His fingers were twisted at unnatural angles. The radius and ulna were likely fractured. Pain reception is delayed due to shock, Izuku noted, his voice trembling only slightly. He cradled his broken arm with his left hand. Output was significantly higher than anticipated. You broke your arm. All Might panicked, flitting around him. We need a hospital. I told you about the egg. You exploded the egg. I didn't explode the egg, Izuku gritted out, sweat suddenly beading on his forehead as the pain hit him like a freight train. I exploded the microwave. He sank to his knees, breathing through his nose. In. Out. Manage the pain. Don't panic. The vessel held, Izuku gasped. My shoulder is intact. My torso is fine. The energy bottlenecked at the limb. The conduit was too narrow for the voltage. All Might stared at the boy. Izuku was white as a sheet, clearly in agony, but he was still analyzing. You're insane, All Might said, scooping Izuku up into his arms. We're going to UA. I have a friend there who can fix this. But you are banned from smashing anything until we figure out the regulator. Recovery Girl's office, UA High. The kiss felt like a weird suction cup on his forehead. Instantly, a wave of lethargy hit Izuku, dragging his eyelids down. Whatever All Might gave you, it's too much for a normal body, Recovery Girl grumbled, unwrapping the bandages on Izuku's now healed arm. The bones have knit, but your calcium levels are depleted. Here, eat these gummies. She tossed a packet of high-calcium candy at him. All Might sat in the corner, looking like a scolded schoolboy. I told him to visualize an egg. Visualizations are garbage if the boy is a literalist. Recovery Girl snapped. She turned to Izuku. Listen, Sonny. You have muscles. Good ones. That saved your arm from being ripped off entirely. But that quirk? It's like putting a Ferrari engine in a bicycle. You pedaled too hard and bent the frame. Izuku flexed his hand. It was stiff, but it worked. It wasn't the engine, Izuku murmured. It was the transmission. Huh! All Might perked up. Izuku pulled a notebook from his pocket with his left hand. He opened it to a fresh page, sketching a diagram of a human body with vectors of force. I treated the quirk like a special move, Izuku said, his eyes narrowing in concentration. I tried to summon it at the moment of impact. I drew 100% of the power to a single point, my fist. My arm acted as a barrel for a cannon. The pressure was too high. He looked at All Might. You don't switch it on and off, do you? When you fight? All Might scratched his head. Well, no. I am. It's a state of being, Izuku realized. You have the engine idling constantly. You distribute the load across the entire chassis. Izuku stood up. Sit down. Recovery Girl barked. I need to test the theory, Izuku said, ignoring her. He looked at All Might. The egg visualization is flawed for me. It implies containment of an explosion. I need a hydraulic visualization. Or electrical. I need to run the current through the whole circuit at a lower voltage. Can you do that? All Might asked. I don't know, Izuku admitted. But if I don't learn before the entrance exam, I'll kill myself trying to punch a robot. 2 weeks later. The Dagoba junkyard. The entrance exam was months away, but Izuku felt like the clock was ticking down the seconds. He stood in the center of the beach, shirtless. His body was gleaming with sweat. Focus, he muttered. He wasn't trying to punch anything. He was just standing there. Don't grab the sun, he told himself. Just open the blinds. He closed his eyes. He found the ember of One for All. It was roaring, wanting to be released. It wanted to destroy. No, Izuku commanded. Flow. He visualized a water system. Pipes running through his legs, his torso, his arms, his head. He opened the valve. Just a twist. The power surged. He clamped down on it mentally. Too much. Back it off, he gritted his teeth. Veins bulged in his neck. It felt like holding back a flood with a plywood door. 5%. Just give me 5%. A faint, green lightning began to flicker around his body. Not the violent, jagged arcs from the first smash. These were smaller, rhythmic. HRRGGGH. The sand around his feet began to shift, vibrating away from him. Hold it. Izuku hissed. He felt the power filling his muscles. It reinforced his skeleton. It heightened his senses. He could hear a crab scuttling 50 feet away. He could see the individual grains of sand floating in the air. He opened his eyes. They were glowing with a faint teal luminescence. All Might! Izuku called out. All Might was sitting on the hood of the truck, eating a bento. He looked up. Check this. Izuku didn't wind up. He didn't brace. He simply jumped. Whoosh. He shot 10 feet into the air. It wasn't flying, and it wasn't a building-clearing bound. It was a controlled vertical leap. He landed in a crouch, the sand barely disturbed. Full body distribution, Izuku panted, holding the state. The lightning flickered, threatening to die out, but he kept the valve open. I'm calling it. Full cowling. All Might dropped his chopsticks. You figured that out in 2 weeks? All Might stammered. It took me, well, I just did it naturally, but, hearing you explain it, most people would break every bone in their body 10 times before realizing they don't have to use 100%. It's hard, Izuku admitted. He was shaking. The mental strain of regulating the output was immense. It was like trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster. I can only hold it for maybe 30 seconds. And I can't attack with it yet without losing the rhythm. But you aren't breaking, All Might beamed, transforming into his buff form for a thumbs up. That is progress. That is plus ultra. Izuku let the power fade. He collapsed onto the sand, gasping. The fatigue was instant and overwhelming. I have 10 months, Izuku whispered to the sand. In 10 months, 5% has to be as natural as breathing. And I need to learn how to fight with it. He looked at his fists. I need to learn how to fight without breaking my own toys. Month 3, the dojo. The sign outside read Gunhead Martial Arts. It was a practical, combat-focused dojo. Izuku wasn't there to learn how to punch. He knew how to punch. He was there to learn how to move. He was sparring with a journeyman hero, a guy with 4 arms. You're stiff, the instructor barked. Izuku dodged a 4-fist barrage. He was using 2% full cowling. It was barely enough to boost his reaction time, but it was all he could maintain while focusing on technique. Duck. Weave. Slip. Don't rely on the power. Izuku scolded himself. He saw an opening. He stepped in, grabbed the instructor's lower right arm, and used his hip to throw him. Judo throw, Nage. The instructor hit the mat. Good, the man grunted. But you're hesitating on the finish. You have the strength, kid. Why don't you hit me? Because if I miscalculate the output, I'll put a hole in your chest, Izuku said seriously, wiping sweat from his brow. The instructor laughed. Cocky. I like it. Again, Izuku reset. Analysis. My fighting style has been reactionary. Dodge and counter. With One for All, I have the initiative. I need to be aggressive. I need to close the distance before they can blink. He channeled the power. 3%. He moved. It was a blur. He was behind the instructor before the man could raise his guard. Izuku tapped the man's spine. Dead, Izuku whispered. Month 8, Aldera Junior High. The dynamic in the classroom had shifted. It was subtle, but it was there. Bakugo was quiet. Too quiet. He watched Izuku. He watched how Izuku didn't hunch over his notebook anymore. He watched how Izuku walked with a predator's grace. He noticed the way Izuku's uniform was straining against his back muscles. Deku. Izuku stopped packing his bag. Yes, Katsuki? Bakugo stood by his desk. His hands were in his pockets, but his shoulders were tense. You're applying to Yae still? I am. And you think you're going to pass the practical? Without a quirk? Izuku paused. He hadn't told anyone about the transfer. Not his mom. And definitely not Bakugo. I think, Izuku said, turning to face him, that the entrance exam measures potential. And I have plenty of that. Bakugo narrowed his red eyes. You're hiding something. You've been different. Since the sludge villain? I learned that day, Izuku said evenly. That waiting for a hero is a good way to die. So I decided not to wait. Bakugo scoffed. Whatever. Just don't get in my way, or I'll crush you. Nerd. I'll see you there, Katsuki. As Izuku walked out, Bakugo stared at the door. He felt a chill. The pebble wasn't a pebble anymore. It felt like a boulder rolling downhill, gaining speed. The night before the exam, Dagoba Beach was pristine. Not a single wrapper. The sun was setting, turning the ocean into liquid fire. Izuku stood at the water's edge. All Might stood beside him. The hero looked healthier. Not fully healed. That was impossible, but lighter. Having a successor seemed to have taken the weight off his soul. 10 months, All Might said. You did it. I can hold 5% indefinitely, Izuku reported. I can spike to 10% for single impacts without breaking bone, though it causes microfractures and severe muscle fatigue. Anything above 15% is self-destructive. That is, honestly terrifying, All Might laughed. I expected you to be able to throw a punch without dying. Instead, you've built a foundation for a skyscraper. All Might reached into his pocket and pulled out a bento box. I made this. It's terrible. I'm a bad cook. But consider it a graduation gift. Izuku took the box. He smiled. Thank you, All Might. You're ready, Izuku, All Might said, using his first name for the first time. The entrance exam? It's just a formality for you now. Go in there and show them. Show them that the symbol of peace isn't dying, it's evolving. Izuku looked at the ocean. He clenched his fist. The green lightning sparked, dancing across his skin, controlled, tamed, ready. I won't just pass, Izuku said. I'm going to set the standard. He looked at his notebook, lying on the sand. The cover was worn, Hero Analysis for the Future. He picked it up. Tomorrow, he thought. The analysis ends. The practical begins. The day of the exam. Yue High Gates. The massive glass barriers of Yue High glittered in the morning sun. Hundreds of students were streaming in. Some looked nervous. Some looked arrogant. Izuku walked through the crowd. He wasn't wearing the standard middle school uniform. He wore a simple athletic tracksuit he had modified himself, reinforced at the joints. He didn't trip over his own feet. He didn't drop his ID card. He stopped at the gate, looking up at the H-shaped building. Out of the way, Deku. Bakugo walked past him, bumping his shoulder. Izuku didn't stumble. He barely moved. He absorbed the impact and kept his balance perfectly. Good luck, Katsuki, Izuku said. Bakugo paused, looking back, confused by the lack of fear. He clicked his tongue and kept walking. Izuku took a deep breath. He adjusted his red shoes. He stepped onto the campus. I am here, he thought. And I am ready. The hair sat on the center of Midoriya Izuku's palm. It was a single, golden strand, defying the gentle sea breeze of Dagoba Beach. It looked innocuous. It looked ridiculous. It was the most powerful object on the planet. Eat this, All Might had said. Izuku stared at the strand. His analytical mind, usually a roaring engine of deduction and strategy, ground to a halt. He looked up at the skeletal figure of the number one hero. Biometrics, Izuku said, his voice flat. DNA ingestion. I assumed a blood transfer, or perhaps a bioenergy resonance. But digestion? It doesn't matter how it gets in there, All Might said, looking slightly embarrassed, scratching his sunken cheek. As long as you take in my DNA with the intent of receiving the power, it's a spiritual transaction as much as a biological one. Izuku nodded slowly. He didn't make a face. He didn't gag. He treated the moment with the solemnity of a knight accepting a sword, or a soldier accepting a mission. He pinched the hair between his thumb and forefinger. This is the legacy, Izuku thought. 8 generations of heroes. Nana Shimura. All Might. All of them, condensed into this genetic key. He placed the hair on his tongue and swallowed it dry. It scratched his throat on the way down. Done, Izuku said. All Might blinked. Just like that? No EW? No water? Inefficient, Izuku stated, picking up his backpack. Now, we wait for the metabolic process. How long until the power manifests? Usually a few hours, All Might said, transforming into his muscular form in a puff of steam to address the boy properly. Your body needs to process it. But listen, Midoriya, once it activates, you cannot simply use it. If you try to summon 100% of my power instantly, your limbs will explode. Not break. Explode. Izuku adjusted the strap of his bag. I have calculated for recoil. My skeletal density has increased over the last 4 years of heavy lifting, but human bone has a yield strength of about 130 megapascals. If one for all exerts force exceeding a standard hydraulic press, my humerus will shatter like glass. All Might stared at him. Right. Exactly. So, we need to test it safely. Tomorrow, Izuku said. I need to go home and monitor my vitals. I'll keep a log of temperature spikes and heart rate variability. You really take the fun out of mystery, young Midoriya. All Might laughed, a booming sound that frightened away a nearby seagull. But that is good. Tomorrow, we meet at the Takoba scrapyard. It's secluded. We will see what kind of vessel you really are. The digestion. That night, Izuku didn't sleep. He lay in his bed, the glow of his all-might clock illuminating the ceiling. He felt heavy. It wasn't a stomach ache. It was a sensation of density. It felt as if he had swallowed a lead ball that was slowly dissolving into his bloodstream. His veins felt hot. Not feverish, but electric. He sat up at 3 a.m., sweat drenching his shirt. Heart rate, 98 bpm. Resting. Temperature, 38.1 C. He flexed his hand. For a split second, red lines traced their way across his skin, glowing faintly in the dark room. The air around his hand hummed, a low-frequency vibration that rattled the pencils on his desk. Izuku clenched his fist, extinguishing the light. It's here, he thought. The power is here. He didn't feel joy. He felt the weight of the handle. He was holding a loaded gun with no safety, and he was the only one in the room. The Takoba scrapyard. The scrapyard was a maze of crushed cars, rusted beams, and mountains of discarded appliances. It was the perfect place to break things. All Might stood atop a stack of flattened sedans, looking down at Izuku. The boy was dressed in a gray tracksuit, his knees and elbows wrapped in protective support bandages he had applied himself. All right. All Might announced. The power is in you. I can feel the resonance. Now, let's talk about control. All Might hopped down. Picture an egg in a microwave. Izuku paused, a notebook already in his hand. A microwave? Yes. If you don't lower the wattage, or poke a hole in the egg, it explodes. Boom. That is you right now. You need to keep the egg intact. Izuku frowned, scribbling rapidly. The metaphor implies internal pressure building until structural failure. The egg is my body. The microwave is the activation of the quirk. So you're suggesting I lower the wattage? Exactly. But how? Izuku looked up. A microwave has a dial. My body does not. How do I regulate the output of a biological energy source I've never used? All Might froze. He blinked. You just clench your buttocks and yell smash within your heart? Izuku stared at him. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. All Might, Izuku said slowly. You are a natural genius, aren't you? Well, I suppose. Which means, Izuku muttered, turning back to his notebook, you have no idea how to teach the mechanics because you never had to learn them. You operated on instinct from day one. Hey! I'm a great teacher. We'll see, Izuku said. He walked over to a rusted, cast-iron safe that was half buried in the dirt. It was massive, likely weighing a ton. I need data, Izuku said. I can't regulate the output until I know what the maximum output feels like. I need to fire the gun to know how much kickback it has. Wait. All Might stepped forward. If you use 100%, you will break your arm. I know, Izuku said calmly. He stood before the safe. He widened his stance. He breathed in through his nose, expanding his diaphragm. I have analyzed the medical risks, Izuku said, his voice detached, clinical. A clean fracture of the radius and ulna is preferable to an unknown variable. If I hesitate in a real fight because I fear the recoil, I will die. I need to know the pain. I need to know the limit. Midoriya, stop. You don't have to. Izuku didn't listen. He closed his eyes. He visualized the energy. It wasn't an egg. To him, it looked like a star trapped in his chest. Draw it out, he commanded. He pulled the energy. It rushed through his shoulder, down his bicep, into his forearm. It was agonizing. It felt like magma. His muscles spasmed. The red veins erupted across his skin, glowing bright crimson. Smash! Izuku threw the punch. He didn't just hit the safe. He obliterated the physics of the immediate area. KRKOM. The sound was not a metallic clang. It was the sound of the atmosphere collapsing. The safe vanished. It was simply erased, turned into shrapnel that flew faster than bullets, embedding into the junk piles 100 meters away. A cone of compressed air blasted out from Izuku's fist, carving a trench through the scrapyard, toppling a tower of cars. All Might shielded his face against the hurricane-force wind. When the dust settled, silence returned. Izuku stood there. His right arm hung limp at his side. It was a ruin. The sleeve was gone. The skin was purple and black. The arm was twisted in a way arms should not twist. Izuku was pale. Sweat poured down his face. His pupils were dilated from the shock, but he wasn't screaming. He lifted his left hand and tapped the side of his head. Then, he pointed at his broken arm. Variable 1 confirmed, Izuku rasped, his voice trembling with pain but steady in tone. Output is excessive. Recoil traveled up the kinetic chain to the shoulder socket. Rotator cuff is strained, but intact. The break is midshaft. All Might stared in horror. Kid! You're analyzing? You just blew your arm apart. Izuku's knees buckled. He fell to the ground, clutching the limb. The pain is significant. Need ice. And calories. All Might scooped him up. Hospital. Now. You rational madman. The handle. Recovery girl's cane hit Izuku's shin with a sharp thwack. Ow, Izuku said, sitting on the bed in the young nurse's office. His arm was back in one piece, though it throbbed with a phantom ache. You are an idiot, recovery girl said, though her eyes held a glimmer of grudging respect. I've seen reckless. I've seen stupid. But I've never seen calculated self-destruction quite like this. I needed a baseline, Izuku argued, eating a glucose bar wrapper and all before spitting out the plastic. Now I know what not to do. He treated it like a science experiment. All Might sighed, sitting in the corner in his skinny form. He destroyed a safe. And his arm. And he didn't even cry. Crying consumes electrolytes, Izuku muttered. He looked at his healed hand. He clenched it. The egg metaphor is flawed, Izuku said. All Might perked up. It is? Yes. An egg in a microwave explodes because the pressure builds up everywhere at once inside a container that can't vent. But my body isn't a sealed container. It's a circuit. Izuku grabbed a marker and walked to the whiteboard on the wall of the nurse's office. He began to draw. One for all is the battery, Izuku explained, drawing a circle. My limbs are the wires. My fist is the bulb. When I punched, I sent the entire voltage of the battery into a wire rated for 12 volts. The wire melted. Okay. All Might nodded. So you need a bigger wire? No, Izuku said. I can't grow bigger bones overnight. I need a transformer. I need to step down the voltage before it enters the wire. He drew a complex diagram of the human nervous system. Izuku pointed at All Might, don't switch the power on and off. I watched the footage of your fight with Toxic Chainsaw. You moved faster than human reaction time before the punch. That implies your body is constantly flooded with the quirk. I suppose? All Might scratched his head. I just flex. It's an idle state, Izuku said, his eyes widening. You treat one for all like a suit of armor. You wear it. I treated it like a gun. I tried to fire it. Izuku looked at his hand. I don't need to punch with one for all. I need to be one for all. The awakening of full cowling, week 2 of training. The scrapyard was raining. The mud was slick. Izuku stood in the center of a clearing. He was breathing rhythmically. In. Out. In. Out. He wasn't trying to punch. He was trying to exist. Don't summon the sun, he told himself. Just let the sunlight in through the window. He visualized the switchboard in his mind. He saw the dial that read 100%. He mentally reached out and turned it down. 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 5%. He engaged the power. The green lightning didn't explode out of him. It flickered. It buzzed like a faulty neon sign. It traced lines across his legs, his torso, his arms. Hold it, Izuku hissed through gritted teeth. The sensation was entirely different from the smash. It wasn't pain. It was tension. It felt like his muscles were vibrating at a high frequency. It felt like he had just downed 10 energy drinks. You're glowing! All Might called out from under an umbrella. I'm circulating it, Izuku gritted out. Instead of pooling it in the fist, I'm letting it flow through the whole system. Izuku took a step. Boom. He didn't mean to, but he launched himself forward. The mud exploded under his foot. He shot 10 feet forward in the blink of an eye, slamming face first into a pile of tires. He scrambled up, spitting out rubber water. A grin broke across his face. A terrifying, feral grin. I didn't break, Izuku whispered. He looked at his legs. I moved. And I didn't break. That's it. All Might cheered. Full body distribution. Full cowling, Izuku corrected. It's a cowl. A mantle. He got back into position, again. I need to calibrate the movement. My brain expects a certain speed, but my body is moving 3 times faster. I have to update my internal lag compensation. The grind. The next 3 months were hell. But it was a calculated hell. Izuku wasn't just lifting trash anymore. He was rewriting his instincts. Month 3. Izuku was at the community gym, on the treadmill. The machine was set to max. He was running easily. Analysis. 5% full cowl increases cardiovascular efficiency. I can run at 30 km per hour without entering anaerobic debt. My stamina has effectively tripled. Month 5. Izuku was in an abandoned warehouse he used for parkour. He leaped from a railing to a ceiling beam. He overshot. He smashed his head against the rafters. He fell, twisting in midair like a cat, landing on his feet. Proprioception is still lagging, he muttered, rubbing his head. I need to trust the power, not force it. Month 6. Sparring. Izuku had signed up for a sleazy, underground mixed martial arts gym in the next district over. Not for villains, just for tough guys. He needed live targets. His opponent was a man with a minor strength enhancer quirk. A brute. Come on, little high schooler. The man taunted. Izuku stood in a southpaw stance. He flickered one for all on. Just for a second. Flash. He was inside the man's guard. Izuku didn't punch. He used a judo sweep. He channeled 5% into his leg. The sweep hit the man's ankle with the force of a sledgehammer. The man flipped horizontally in the air, landing with a breathless whump. Izuku stood over him. You telegraph your right hook, Izuku said politely. And your center of gravity is too high. The gym went silent. Izuku grabbed his towel and left. The classroom Cold War. Aldera Junior High felt smaller now. The desks felt like toys. The drama of the other students felt distant. Izuku sat in his seat, reading a university-level textbook on applied kinesiology. Deku. Izuku didn't flinch. He marked his page and looked up. Bakugo Katsuki stood there. His hands were smoking. His eyes were narrow slits of suspicion. You've been disappearing, Bakugo said. After school. Every day. And you're different. I'm training, Katsuki, Izuku said calmly. Training? Bakugo scoffed. Training for what? To die in the entrance exam? You think doing a few push-ups makes you a hero? Izuku stood up. The class went quiet. Usually, Deku would shrink. He would stammer. Izuku stood to his full height. He was only an inch shorter than Bakugo now, but he stood straighter. His uniform was tight across his chest. His neck was thick with muscle. I'm not training to die, Izuku said softly. I'm training to win. Bakugo stared at him. He looked at Izuku's eyes. The fear was gone. In its place was a quiet, terrifying confidence. It was the look of a soldier who had seen the war before the battle even started. Bakugo took a step back. He didn't mean to. It was instinct. His predator brain recognized the threat. Don't look down on me, Bakugo yelled, trying to regain control. I'll kill you in the exam. I'll crush you. I know you'll try, Izuku said. Do your best, Katsuki. He walked past Bakugo. He didn't run. He walked. Bakugo stood there, his explosions fizzling out. What the hell is he? The limit. Month 9. I hit a wall, Izuku said. He was sitting on the beach with All Might. They were watching the sunset. A wall? All Might asked, concerned. You're maintaining 5% consistently. Your mobility is excellent. It's not enough, Izuku said. 5% makes me strong. It makes me fast. But it doesn't make me All Might. If a zero-pointer robot shows up, 5% won't dent it. You don't need to destroy the zero-pointer, All Might reminded him. It's an obstacle to avoid. But a villain isn't, Izuku countered. If I face a villain with high durability, 5% is just annoyance. I need a finisher. But 100% breaks me, so we find a middle ground? I've been trying, Izuku said. I can spike to 10% or 15% for a split second. At the point of impact, he stood up and walked to a large truck tire half buried in the sand. Watch. Izuku took a stance. He activated full cowl. Green lightning crackled. 5%. He wound up a punch. Just before his fist hit the tire, he screamed internally. More. The lightning flared brighter. The air shrieked. 10%. 15%. Bam. The tire didn't just move. It was ripped in half. The sand behind it was blasted away in a cone. Izuku recoiled, clutching his wrist. NGH. Are you okay? Microfractures, Izuku diagnosed through gritted teeth, shaking his hand. Connective tissue strain. But no break. My bones held. He looked at All Might, sweat dripping from his nose. I can use higher percentages. But only for an instant. It's like a camera flash. If I hold it too long, the bulb burns out. But if I time it perfectly, you have a smash. All Might finished, grinning proudly. A controlled smash, Izuku corrected. It hurts. It leaves me sore. But it's a weapon. The night before, 10 months complete, the beach was clean. Not just clean, it was beautiful. The stars reflected on the water. Izuku stood at the railing of the promenade. He looked at his hands. They were rough. Scarred. Strong. He thought about the hair. He thought about the handle. He had forged the handle. It wasn't perfect. It was rough iron. It hurt to hold. But he could swing the sword now. All Might leaned on the railing next to him. You know, All Might said softly. When I met you, I thought I was giving this power to a dreamer. Someone who needed to be protected. He looked at Izuku. But you didn't need protection. You needed ammunition. Izuku smiled. It was a small, sharp smile. I have the ammo, Izuku said. Tomorrow, I pulled the trigger. Are you nervous? No, Izuku said. He pulled out his notebook. I've memorized the schematics of the robots from leaked alumni forums. I've analyzed the urban terrain of the testing centers. I've calculated the point values needed to pass. He closed the book with a snap. I'm not nervous. I'm prepared. The exam day. The gates of UA High loomed overhead. They were golden, imposing, the gates to Olympus. Izuku walked toward them. He wore a simple tracksuit, practical running shoes, and wrist braces he had sewn himself. He saw the other students. He saw a girl with gravity powers trip. He saw a boy with engines in his legs looking stiff. He saw Bakugo scowling at the clouds. Izuku didn't stop. He didn't trip. In the original timeline, Midoriya Izuku tripped over his own feet and was saved by Uraraka Ochako. He was a nervous wreck. In this timeline, Midoriya Izuku saw the uneven paver stone. He stepped over it smoothly. Uraraka Ochako, who was about to reach out to help him, pulled her hand back. She watched the green-haired boy walk past. He moved with a strange, fluid grace, like a jungle cat patrolling its territory. Whoa, she whispered. He looks intense. Izuku stopped at the entrance. He looked up at the H-shaped building. He felt the fire in his gut. The 5%. It was idling, purring, waiting. I am not here to do my best, Izuku thought, his eyes hardening into emerald steel. I am here to dominate. He stepped into the shadows of the hall. The pencil lead snapped. Somewhere to Izuku's left, a student had pressed too hard, the graphite shattering under the pressure of anxiety. The sound was a sharp crack in the tomb-like silence of the lecture hall. Izuku didn't look up. He didn't flinch. His hand continued to glide across the optical answer sheet, filling in bubbles with a rhythmic, machine-like precision. Question 42. Calculate the trajectory of a projectile affected by a quirk that reduces air resistance by 50% relative to standard gravity. Izuku's eyes scanned the variables. He didn't need to write out the formula. He had memorized the ballistic coefficients of standard support gear during his lunch breaks in second year. The math played out in his head like a scrolling terminal window. Answer C. He filled the bubble. The written exam for UA High was notorious. It was designed to filter out the thugs who only wanted to punch things. It demanded knowledge of law, physics, history, and quirk ethics. For most students, it was a nightmare. For Midoriya Izuku, it was a warm-up. He finished the final section, English comprehension, with 20 minutes on the clock. He set his pencil down, aligning it perfectly parallel to the edge of his desk. He closed his eyes, slowing his heart rate, conserving glucose. 2 rows down, Bakugo Katsuki was vibrating with suppressed aggression, his pencil digging into the paper as if he were trying to carve the answers into the desk itself. Bakugo was brilliant. Izuku knew that better than anyone, but his brilliance was fueled by fury. Izuku's was fueled by cold, hard necessity. Written exam complete, Izuku thought. Phase 1 success. Now, the variable factor, the orientation. Welcome to my live show. Present Mick's voice hit the auditorium like a physical wave. His quirk voice was amplified by the massive speakers, rattling the ribcages of the thousands of examinees. Everybody say hey. Silence. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Izuku sat in the middle row, his posture impeccable. He was wearing his modified track outfit, a dark green compression shirt under a durable, gray athletic jacket, and cargo pants reinforced with Kevlar weave at the knees and shins. He looked less like a student and more like a private military contractor on a budget. Tough crowd. Mike shrugged. All right, examinees. I'm here to give you the lowdown on the practical exam. Are you ready? Izuku tuned out the theatrics and focused on the data. Cityscape maneuver. 10 minutes. 3 types of pseudovillains. The screen behind Mike lit up with silhouettes of the robots. 1 pointer, high speed, low durability. Likely a scout unit. 2 pointer, medium armor, likely ranged weaponry. 3 pointer, heavy armor, melee focus. High point value, but time-consuming. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Strategy. Avoid 3 pointers unless structural weakness is exposed. Focus on clusters of 2 pointers. Maintain mobility. Don't get bogged down in static exchanges. Excuse me. May I ask a question? A hand shot up in the crowd. A boy with glasses and a severe haircut stood up, the spotlight hitting him instantly. There appear to be 4 types of villains on this handout. The boy shouted, chopping the air with his hand like a robot. If this is a printing error, you should be ashamed. We are here seeking the guidance of Japan's top heroes. The boy then spun around, pointing a finger directly at the row where Izuku sat. And you! The one in the green tracksuit. Izuku blinked, shifting his gaze to the accuser. You've been sitting there with your eyes closed muttering coordinates under your breath for the last 5 minutes. It's distracting. If you're here to run simulations in your head, then leave. This is an exam, not a daydream. The auditorium turned to look. 1,000 pairs of eyes bored into Izuku. Usually, this was the part where Midoriya Izuku would turn red, stammer an apology, and shrink into his seat. Instead, Izuku stood up. He didn't look angry. He looked bored. I wasn't muttering coordinates, Izuku said. His voice wasn't loud, but it projected clearly, a trick he'd learned from diaphragmatic breathing exercises. I was calculating the fuel efficiency of a track unit versus a bipedal unit based on the silhouettes provided. He looked the glasses boy in the eye. And regarding the 4th robot, if you had read the fine print on the bottom of page 2, you would see a disclaimer regarding environmental hazards. It's likely an obstacle to be avoided, not a target to be engaged. 0 points. Izuku sat back down. Now, can we let the pro hero finish? We're burning daylight. The auditorium went dead silent. Even present Mike looked impressed behind his sunglasses. Okay. Mike recovered. The listener is correct. The 4th robot is a 0-pointer. It's just an obstacle. Think of it like a Thursday morning rush hour. Just avoid it. The glasses boy, Ida Tenya, sat down slowly, his face burning. He glanced back at Izuku. He analyzed the handout that quickly? And he wasn't intimidated? Who is he? Izuku ignored the stare. He was checking the laces on his red combat boots. Double knot. Tuck loops. No trip hazards. Battle Center B. The gates of Battle Center B were titanic. They towered 50 feet into the air, a testament to UA's absurd budget. Beyond the gates lay a replica of a city district, complete with paved roads, office buildings, and streetlights. A crowd of students gathered at the entrance, stretching, checking quirks, vibrating with nerves. Izuku stood near the front, isolated. He wasn't stretching. He had already warmed up his kinetic chain during the bus ride with isometric holds. He stood perfectly still, his arms hanging loose, conserving energy. He sensed someone approaching. Hey! You're the guy from the auditorium. It was the girl with the brown bob cut. Uraraka Ochako. She looked nervous, clutching the front of her jumpsuit. That was amazing! You totally shut that loud guy down, she said, pumping a fist. I'm Uraraka Ochako. Good luck out there. Izuku looked at her. Quirk, 0 gravity. Note the pads on her fingers. Close range activation required. High utility, low combat initiation speed unless paired with projectiles. Midoriya, he nodded curtly. Watch your nausea levels. If you overuse gravity manipulation, it likely affects your inner ear. Eh? Uraraka blinked. How did you start? Present Mix's voice exploded from the tower speakers. The crowd jumped. They looked around confused. There was no countdown, but Izuku was already gone. The moment the S of start hit the air, Izuku's calves exploded into motion. Green electricity crackled faintly under his tracksuit. Full cowling, 5%. He was a blur. He didn't run like a track star. He ran like a hunter, low to the ground, cutting through the air resistance. By the time the other students realized the exam had begun, Izuku was already 50 meters inside the city. What's wrong? Mike yelled. There are no countdowns in real fights. Run! That kid is already taking all the points. The panic set in. The herd stampeded, but they were chasing a ghost. The hunt. Izuku rounded the corner of a fake main street. His senses were dialed to 11. The 5% power hummed in his veins, making the world seem just a little bit slower. Target detected. 3 o'clock. A one-pointer. A wheeled drone moving at 40 miles per hour. Izuku didn't stop. He adjusted his vector. He leaped off a mailbox, ran along the side of a convenience store for 2 steps to gain height, and dropped. He didn't punch. Punching metal at high speed was bad for the knuckles, even with one for all. He landed on the robot's shoulders, grabbing the primary sensory array, the glowing red eye, with both hands. Leverage. With a sharp, violent twist of his hips and back, Izuku ripped the sensor head clean off the chassis. Sparks showered him. The robot deactivated instantly, crashing into a lamppost. 1, Izuku counted. He pushed off the wreck, launching himself down the alley. 2 targets ahead. 2 pointers. Bipedal. Firing rubber bullets. Bang! Bang! Projectiles whizzed past his ear. Izuku didn't flinch. He saw the barrel rotation. He predicted the firing line. He zigzagged, closing the distance in seconds. Right leg. Sweeping kick. He channeled the power into his shin, a momentary spike to 8%, and kicked the leg of the first robot. Metal buckled. The joint sheared. The robot collapsed. Izuku used the falling robot as a ramp, vaulting into the air toward the second one. Smash. It wasn't a scream. It was a statement. He drove his heel down onto the second robot's cranial unit. The metal crunched like a soda can. 6 points, Izuku muttered, rolling out of the landing to preserve his knees. He was a machine. He moved through the city like water through a cracked dam. He didn't waste movement. Every jump had a landing spot. Every strike targeted a weld line, a sensor, or a joint. He was dissecting the exam. Elsewhere in the city, chaos reigned. A boy with a laser navel, Oyama, was blasting indiscriminately. Merci! He shouted, hitting a robot. Then Izuku dropped from a fire escape, stomped a 3-pointer that was sneaking up behind Oyama, and vanished down a side street before the glittery boy could even turn around. 18 points, Izuku's voice echoed from the alley. Ida Tenya was speeding through the streets, using his engines to kick through robots. I must maintain a high pace. That boy. Midoriya. I haven't seen him. Has he fallen behind? Ida turned a corner and skidded to a halt. It was a graveyard. 5 3-pointers, the massive, tank-tread villains, lay in a heap. They hadn't been blown up. They had been dismantled. Tracks ripped off. Turrets bent backwards. Cables severed. In the center of the carnage, Izuku stood atop a pile of scrap, checking his watch. 45 points, Izuku said to himself. He looked up, spotting Ida. The eastern sector is clear. I'd recommend the north quadrant if you want targets. Ida gaped. You did this? Without an emitter quirk? Physics is a quirk if you use it right, Izuku said. Green lightning flickered. Zip. Izuku was gone. The teacher's lounge. In the dark monitoring room, screens lined the walls, showing the carnage in every battle center. This year's crop is bountiful, Midnight purred, watching a student turn steel to vine. Agreed, Cementos nodded. But there are a few standouts. Battle Center B, Snipe pointed a gloved finger. The kid in the tracksuit. On the main screen, Izuku was shown executing a perfect judo throw on a robot twice his size, using its own momentum to slam it into a wall. Midoriya Izuku Nizu, the principal, read from a file. Registered quirk, none? No, wait, updated 2 weeks ago. Superpower. Vague. He fights like a pro, Aizawa Eraserhead muttered from the back of the room, his eyes narrowed. He's not using the quirk to overpower them. He's using it to enhance a pre-existing combat style. He checks corners. He clears sight lines. He targets structural weak points. Aizawa leaned forward. He's been trained. All Might, standing in the corner in his skinny form, felt a swell of pride so strong his chest hurt. That's my boy. He's not just fighting, he's performing surgery, but Niza said, his paw hovering over a large red button. Combat ability is only one side of the coin. A hero must also face overwhelming odds. They must face unfairness. Niza grinned. Let's see how they handle the apocalypse. He pressed the button. The 0-pointer. The ground jumped. It wasn't a vibration, it was a convulsion. In Battle Center B, the pavement cracked. Buildings groaned. Dust billowed from the end of the main thoroughfare. Izuku skidded to a halt, having just disabled his 30th robot, 62 points. Seismic activity? No. Rhythmic impact. A shadow swallowed the street. Rising above the skyscrapers was a behemoth. The 0-pointer. It was colossal, a green metal god of destruction that blocked out the sun. Its single red eye was the size of a swimming pool. Target acquired, the robot announced. Its voice shook the glass out of the windows. The students froze. Then, the panic broke. Run! It's huge! That's not an obstacle, that's a monster! The crowd turned and fled. It was the logical choice. There were no points to be gained. Survival was the only metric. Izuku watched the robot. He felt the fear, the lizard brain screaming predator, but he boxed it up. Size, approximate 200 feet. Tonnage, excessive. Speed, slow. Threat level, catastrophic. He turned to run. He had 62 points. He was safe. He had passed. He just needed to retreat to the extraction zone. Oh wow! The cry was faint, buried under the sound of crumbling masonry. Izuku stopped. His body moved before his brain gave the order. He pivoted. His eyes scanned the dust cloud. There, Uraraka Ochako. She was pinned under a slab of concrete debris. She was struggling, her face twisted in pain. The 0-pointer was looming over her, its massive tread descending. The other students were running away. They didn't see her. Or they were too scared to look. Realistic, All Might had said. Be realistic. Reality said she was dead. Physics said a boy couldn't stop a falling mountain. Izuku gritted his teeth. The green lightning flared. Screw realism, one for all. Izuku whispered. He didn't run away. He ran toward the Titan. Full cowl, max output. The lightning turned jagged, violent. He pushed the valve open. 10%. 12%. His muscles screamed. His bones creaked under the pressure. Izuku hit the side of an office building. He didn't climb. He ran up the vertical surface. Step, explode. Step, explode. He shattered the windows with every footfall. He reached the roof level, parallel with the robot's head. The robot was bringing its fist down to crush the street where Uraraka lay. Izuku leaped. He soared through the air, a tiny green bullet against the massive metal sky. He wound back his right arm. He felt the power of 8 generations pooling in his fist. He felt Nana Shimura. He felt All Might. Don't break the arm. Focus the energy. Snap the kinetic chain at the moment of impact. Smash! Izuku screamed the word. He punched the robot, not in the face, but directly into the neck joint, the hydraulic pivot that connected the head to the chassis. Crack boom. The impact was thunderous. The air pressure blasted a hole through the cloud layer above them. The metal of the neck didn't just dent, it sheared. The force of the blow, combined with the robot's own forward momentum, decapitated the zero-pointer. The massive head was blown backward, crashing into a building. The body slumped, the treads grinding to a halt inches from Uraraka. Izuku hung in the air for a second, the shockwave rippling his clothes. Then, gravity took hold. He began to fall. Status report, his mind barked, fighting through the adrenaline haze. Right arm, fractured? No. Heavy bruising. Muscle tearing. Ligaments strained. But functional. He was falling from 20 stories up. In his calculations, he usually had a way down. Parkour. A fire escape. But he was in open air. Uraraka! He tried to yell, but the wind stole his voice. She was floating? No, she was still pinned. He couldn't rely on a save. Think. He saw the building he had jumped from. He was drifting away from it. I need propulsion. He clenched his left fist. He grabbed the pain in his right arm and shoved it aside. He flicked his fingers. A Delaware smash. No, he hadn't invented that yet. He used a raw, unrefined burst of air pressure. He punched the air in the opposite direction. Pow! The recoil dislocated his left shoulder with a sickening pop, but it pushed him back toward the building. He hit the glass wall hard. Gah! He dug his boots into the window frames. He slid down the side of the skyscraper, sparks and glass flying as he used his friction and strength to brake. Screech, crunch. He hit a balcony on the third floor, rolled, and vaulted over the railing to the ground. He landed in a three-point crouch, the superhero landing. His left arm hung uselessly, swinging from the socket. His right arm was purple and trembling. His legs felt like jelly, but he stood up. The dust settled. The zero-pointer lay dead behind him. The street was silent. Every student, every judge, every camera was fixed on the boy in the green tracksuit. Izuku limped over to the debris covering Uraraka. Are you? Izuku wheezed, grabbing the slab with his good hand. Green lightning flickered weakly. Are you injured? He heaved the concrete off her. Uraraka stared at him. She looked at the robot. She looked at his dangling arm. You! She whispered. You saved me. Time's up. Present mix siren wailed. The adrenaline crashed. Izuku's vision swam. The pain in his shoulder finally registered, a white-hot lance of agony. That? Izuku mumbled, swaying on his feet. That was inefficient. He collapsed face first onto the pavement. The assessment. He's crazy. Did you see that jump? He took out the zero-pointer in one hit. The students were murmuring, surrounding the extraction zone. Izuku was sitting up now, sipping a juice box provided by a medical bot. Recovery girl was bustling toward him. Oh my goodness, the old woman sighed, looking at his shoulder. You really don't do things by halves, do you? I calculated the fall damage. Izuku slurred slightly, the painkillers kicking in. I needed lateral momentum. The air punch was the only option. Stop talking and let me kiss you, recovery girl snapped. Smooch. Izuku's stamina drained instantly. His shoulder popped back into place with a sickening click as the muscles regenerated. His bruised right arm faded to a dull yellow. You're lucky, she scolded. Another few percent, and you would have shattered the humerus. You're getting better at holding back, but you're still reckless. It was a rescue scenario, Izuku defended weakly. Ida Tenya stepped forward from the crowd. He looked shaken. You, Ida said, staring down at Izuku. You realized the true nature of the exam, didn't you? Izuku blinked. The true nature? The rescue points. Ida chopped his hand. You sacrificed your score, and your body, to save that girl. While I was busy hunting targets, you were acting like a hero. It was a test of character, and I failed to see it. Izuku stared at him. Rescue points? I assumed there was a hidden metric, but I mostly just didn't want her to die. Yes, Izuku lied smoothly. Calculated risk. Ida looked awestruck. Behind them, Bakugo was standing alone. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't sparking. He was staring at the decapitated zero-pointer. He knew Izuku's stats. He knew Izuku's quirklessness. He hit it, Bakugo thought, a cold rage building in his gut. All this time, he had this power. And he looked down on me. But looking at the destruction, even Bakugo couldn't deny the terrifying truth. Deku wasn't just a pebble anymore. He was the mountain, the faculty room. Well, Nizu chirked, sipping his tea. That was decisive. On the screen, the scoreboard was tabulated. 1. Midoriya Izuku villain points, 62. Rescue points, 60. Total, 122. 2. Bakugo Katsuki villain points, 77. Rescue points, 0. Total, 77. 3. Kirishima Aijiro villain points, 39. Rescue points, 35. Total, 74. He doubled the average score, Midnight noted. And he did it with a dislocated shoulder. His combat situational awareness is top tier, Snipe added. But that power, it destroys his body. He's a glass cannon. Not glass, Aizawa said, staring at the screen where Izuku was calmly explaining something to Uraraka. Steel. He broke, but he didn't shatter. He has the mindset of a veteran. Aizawa stood up, gathering his sleeping bag. He's going to be a problem child, Aizawa sighed. But he might just be the problem we need. 1 week later, the letter arrived. Izuku sat at his desk. His arm was fully healed. He stared at the envelope. He didn't tear it open frantically. He used the letter opener. A holographic disc fell out. All Might appeared. I am here. As a projection, Izuku smiled. Young Midoriya. You passed the written exam with flying colors. 100%. A perfect score. All Might paused for dramatic effect. And the practical? You destroyed the villains. But you also saved a life. And in this job, saving people is the only metric that truly matters. The score appeared on the screen. 122 points. Welcome, Midoriya Izuku. This is your Hero Academia. Izuku watched the hologram fade. He didn't cry. He stood up and walked to his mirror. He looked at his reflection. The green eyes were sharp. The jaw was set. He picked up a marker and wrote on the calendar. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2, Yue High. He clenched his fist, green sparks dancing between his fingers. I'm coming.